Hi guys, today we are going to be discussing a really interesting article about Battle for Neighborville that has kind of slipped under the radar, but it's actually a pretty huge moment in the history of gaming. Before we start, I just want to say thanks to For the Burbs who sent me a link to this article in the comments of one of my recent videos. So last week an article was published on VentureBeat titled How PopCap Ported the First Frostbite Game to Nintendo Switch, which discusses the upcoming port of Plants vs Zombies Battle for Neighborville Complete Edition releasing on the 19th of March. For those of you who don't know what Frostbite is, basically it's a game engine that many Electronic Arts games are built on. The most well known is probably the Battlefield franchise, but it's also what all three Plants vs Zombies shooter games are made on. Frostbite is known for its insane visual fidelity, and some of the best looking games have been built using it. Up until this point it had been thought impossible for a Frostbite game to ever be able to run on a Nintendo Switch. This may have been down to the hardware limitation of Nintendo's consoles, general incompatibility, or potentially the complicated relationship between EA and Nintendo over the years. However, this exclusive interview with Melvin Teo, the producer over at PopCap Vancouver, discusses how BFN is the first Frostbite game to ever be successfully ported over to Nintendo. This opens up huge potential for tons and tons of current or future Frostbite titles to be making their way over to Switch. Especially with the Switch Pro allegedly on the horizon, it's definitely an exciting time which opens up the marketplace massively to allow even more players to experience some really amazing games. Now, I'm not going to sit here and read the article to you as that would be extremely boring. Instead, I will just go over some of the most interesting bits. First off, according to Teo, BFN being ported to Switch was actually the plan from the very start.
The game was rigged from the start,
but they didn't get a chance to do it at launch. Now, whether this had anything to do with the game's initial trailer being leaked and the speculation of the game being forced to release is not clear, but there's definitely potential that this was one of the reasons we didn't see the port a lot sooner. The next important thing to discuss is performance, particularly as this has been a hot topic around the BFN Complete Edition in the PvZ community. As expected, Teo said that there was a massive technical undertaking for the studio, which actually involved another specific porting studio called QLOC-SA to provide support for the project. Now, I know a lot of people have joked about the performance of the Switch version is going to be like 1 frame per second, but ironically, when the initial test took place and they actually managed to get the game booted up, Teo said it hit like 2 or 3 frames per second. It was a slideshow and we had a lot of work to do. Quite honestly, I don't think we're going to have many issues in terms of performance. On other consoles, I very rarely had any issues with BFN, plus with this being the first Frostbite game ever coming to Switch, I imagine EA was keeping a close eye on the project to make sure it ran smoothly. Obviously 2 or 3 FPS is the stuff of nightmares, but this was their first ever test of the game on a completely new system. But to put you all at ease, Teo later states, "We made a lot of really smart engineering decisions and optimizations to make it run at a steady 30 frames per second without compromising the visual quality of the game." Just to be clear, this isn't them saying the game will be of the same visual fidelity as on other platforms. This will mainly be down to the lower resolution and limited hardware of the Switch, such as the small 4GB of RAM. What they mean is that they didn't have to compromise the overall look and feel of the game for optimization purposes, which as you can expect is a very important part of any game, but particularly in Plants vs Zombies case. Overall, I think this is really exciting for the future of Frostbite games coming to Nintendo Switch, and it's nice to actually have some positive news about Battle for Neighborville for a change. However, I think this somewhat makes me feel that Battle for Neighborville was a guinea pig game for a lot of reasons. It's almost like the game was built to become a Switch title in a sense. It may explain the slimming down of loads of aspects the fanbase loved from the previous game to ensure the game would actually be able to be made small enough for all content to make it onto the Switch. Then again, if this had been the case, why didn't they wait for the Switch version to be ready and then release the game? Maybe the game being leaked early had much bigger repercussions than initially thought. But whatever the case, it was an interesting behind the scenes article that had some positive news, and I'm very excited to get my hands on the game in less than 2 weeks. Anyway guys, that's about it for today's video. As always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and if you do want to support the channel further, check out my Patreon page by clicking on screen now or through the link in the description. But other than that, I shall see you in the next one. Okay, thanks guys. Bye.